Hi everybody, thank you for joining us for this afternoon's MSc Big Data webinar. My name is Lucy Welch, so I may have spoken to some of you on the phone or in emails. I work in the student inquiries team at Stirling. So just to give you a bit of an idea of how the webinar will run today, your mic and videos have been disabled, so you'll need to use the chat function to interact with us. So if you're having any difficulty hearing or you need any assistance, just write that in the chat area. We do welcome questions, but to get the most out of the presentation today, we ask that you would submit questions through the QA section, but we will be keeping an eye on the chat area as well. So we'll be answering questions at the end of the presentation, and you can submit questions on the right hand side in the QA section here. You can upvote questions that have already been asked. So if you think that something somebody else has asked is particularly relevant and you would like to see that answered first, you can upvote it. And we will be sending this recording out within a few days as well. So without further ado, I will hand over to Dr. Swingler. Thank you.
Hello everybody, good afternoon. Well, it's afternoon here, it might not be where you are. So thank you very much for logging in, coming along and listening to what we have to tell you today. So my name's Dr. Kevin Swingler, and I'm the Programme Director for Big Data here at the University of Stirling. And so I'll spend the next 20 minutes or so just telling you a little bit about where we are in Stirling, what it's like to live in the city of Stirling, and of course some interesting things about the course. So I guess you probably know, but Stirling is in the middle of Scotland. You can see it on the map there. And Scotland's quite a small country, quite a small population, and we're right in the middle of it. So we're pretty close to the big cities of Glasgow and Edinburgh, but we're also close to the hills and the countryside, and it's quite a nice place to live. But we'll come back to that in a minute. So I'll tell you about the university first. Here we are at the University of Stirling. We've got about 14,000 students, so we're not a huge university. It's on a very pleasant campus. I'll show you some pictures in a minute. And about 3,800 of those students are postgraduate. So that's the level at which we're talking about today. There's about 1,500 staff working here. We're quite an international university at the moment. If you count them, there's about 120 different nationalities represented here on campus, so there are people from all over the world. And about 20% of our students actually come from overseas overall, and for postgraduates, that number's higher. So there really is a good community of international students. You'll meet other people from your home country and get to meet people from all over the world. So we're doing very well here in Scotland, in Stirling, with the satisfaction of our students. People like to come and study here, and they say nice things about us after they've gone. So we're third in Scotland out of all the universities in this country for overall student satisfaction. Actually, we're voted the best in Scotland for welcoming international students. So it's a very nice place to come from overseas. We have officially the nicest campus in Scotland, and I'll show you some pictures in a minute and you might be able to see why. We're also first in Scotland for the quality of our teaching and for the quality of our sports facilities. So actually Stirling is Scotland's university for sport. It's where a lot of people will come specifically to study and do sport. So we have an Olympic-sized swimming pool, we have excellent gym and good sporting facilities. We have the National Tennis Centre here as well. So if you're interested in a little bit of exercise in amongst your study, then Stirling's a very nice place to come and do that. So here's a few pictures of the campus. You can see it's quite leafy and green, and there's this nice big lake in the middle. Maybe you'll be able to paddle around it in a canoe. And it's a very nice environment. It's out of the city, so it's not noisy and busy. It's a very nice, relaxed environment, but it's only 10 minutes or so into the city of Stirling itself, with the shops and the cafes and so on. So Stirling itself, it is a city officially, but it's not very big. It's probably not what you would recognise as a city if you come from well, almost anywhere else, to be honest. But it's very nice. It's a safe and friendly place to live. There's enough to do here, lots of shops and cafes and cinemas and so on. So there's the types of thing you would expect from a city, but it's quite small, and it's very clean, and the air is very clear, and it's really quite a pleasant place to live. It's also a reasonably cheap place to live, at least compared to the bigger cities in Scotland. So Stirling is about an hour from Glasgow in one direction and about an hour from Edinburgh in the other direction, and these are the two largest cities in Scotland, and it's a pretty easy train journey to get to those for all the more interesting things, the nightlife and so on, that you might want out of a big city. But those places are a bit more expensive to live because they're, the big popular cities. So I won't read these out, but you can see a kind of average guide there to the price that you might be expected to, the money you might be expected to spend in a year of living here in Stirling. So as I mentioned, here on campus, we're out of the city. We've got this nice open space where you will probably have your accommodation and also where you'll get all of your teaching. So it's all done in one place, so there's no travelling around a city from one lecture to the next. It's just walking down the corridor. And so we have a very nice new state-of-the-art library and some modern computer labs and so on, everything that you'll need to help you learn. And so I guess I should move on to what it is you'll be learning if you come here. So we're talking about the Masters of Big Data, and this is a one-year course. If you do it full-time, you can do it part-time, over 2 years if you want. And it's broken down into 2 semesters. The first semester is the slightly more introductory level material. So we've got some mathematics and some statistics, specifically aimed at people who are going to study data science or big data. So we've picked the bits of maths and stats that we think you'll need, and we've packaged those up in a kind of introductory course. So we're not expecting you to have a lot of maths and stats before you start. There's also an introductory course to Python scripting. So that's the representing and manipulating data course. That's specifically about scripting with the programming language Python. And then also there's a module in that first semester on the commercial and scientific applications of big data. And this is largely a course of invited guest speakers who come in from industry and from science and from health and so on, and tell us and our students what they're doing and how their jobs have changed recently because of the increased use and reliance on data and data analytics. So this not only opens your eyes to all of the potential career opportunities that you might have, it also shows you and gives you a real hands-on idea of how the world is changing because of big data. And it's from these first lectures that a lot of our students end up getting their dissertation projects, which I'll talk about in a couple of slides' time, and sometimes ultimately the job that they move into after they finish studying. And this is important, and it's an interesting course because studying data science, studying big data is not something that you do for its own sake. You won't, well, you might end up with a job as a data scientist, but you have to be a data scientist in some organization. Okay, so if you're an accountant, you know what you're going to do, right? You're going to be an accountant. But if you're a data scientist, you might be the data scientist in a hospital or for a sports team or in the marketing department of Coca-Cola, or, pretty much anybody of size nowadays recruits data scientists. And so it's the kind of qualification that's very nice to have if you're not really sure yet exactly what you might want to work in, or if you've decided, I'd really like to work in a particular field, but I'm not qualified to do so. So if I decided I'd like to work in medicine, I can't become a GP type doctor, a medical doctor. That would take me too long to train for. But I could go and become a data scientist in a hospital and work with the doctors, work with the researchers, and use my data skills to improve people's treatments, improve people's outcomes, and so on. So it's a really nice way of picking a career that's not constrained so much by what you've trained to be. And that's really the purpose of that course, to give you a broad idea of where you might like to go when you finish. Okay, so that's first semester, then we have Christmas, and when we come back from that, there are the 3 more advanced courses, and that is a course on databases, both relational and these new NoSQL databases that people are increasingly using. There's a module on data analytics, that's machine learning, data mining, and then finally there's a course on cluster computing, and that involves things like Hadoop and Spark, and using MapReduce to process data over large clusters of computers. So that represents the taught components of the course. You'll have some coursework for each of those, an assignment which is worth half the marks, and an exam which is worth the other half of the marks. And then when you've finished all of those, which is just happening now, actually we're in the middle of exams at the moment. I've taken a break from marking to talk to you today. And when that's all finished, the one last thing that you'll do in your year here is to complete a summer dissertation project. So this is something that will take you 3 months of your own full-time work. It's not taught, although you do get supervision. You pick a subject, whatever you want. It might be a technology that you're particularly interested in. It might be that you really liked machine learning and you'd like to do something in that, or databases, or whatever you've chosen. And generally, you'll also choose an application area. So perhaps you've got a hobby like sport or something, and you think, I'd really like to do a project using big data to analyze the results of football matches, or anything you really decide. It's quite easy to get hold of data on almost anything nowadays. So you pick some technologies, you pick something, a field to do some work in, and you carry out a project. We do our best to try and help students find real commercial projects. So we have companies and we have the health service and all these organizations who come to us with projects for students to carry out. So you may well find that you're working over the summer for a company on a real project that's of value to them. We can't guarantee that you will, but we do our best to make sure that students who want one get a placement, or at least a project with a real organization. So the types of projects that we've had in the past are pretty broad. There's a list here: spotting trading fraud, sentiment analysis of all kinds of things now, political debates or Twitter debates and so on. We had a nice project last year where somebody was predicting when cows would give birth. Somebody did a nice project for a rugby team, analysing the way the rugby players ran around using specially instrumented vests that they wore as they played the game. So this dissertation gives you your first insight into possibly the type of job that you might want to go into. If you think, no, I really want to work in finance, I want to go and work in a bank, and that's what I want to have the experience of on my CV, then you do a dissertation on big data analytics in finance, and that gives you something real to talk about when you go for those job interviews at the end of the summer. Okay, so that's a reasonably quick pass through the course, through the materials that we teach. You probably can tell from the way I've been describing it so far that the whole program is dedicated to trying to help you get a job. When we designed it in the first place, that was the one question that we asked. What should you have on your CV if you want a job as a data scientist when you're finished? And we talked to lots of companies, we talked to data recruitment agencies, and we said, what does the dream CV look like for a data scientist? We can't give you much in the way of work experience, but what skills should you have? And so we compiled a list of the key skills, the things that people were looking for, and those are the things that went into the courses. So this isn't necessarily the type of course you would do as preparation for a PhD or something like that. It's not really strongly on the academic side, although of course it has all of that academic rigor that you would expect out of a university course, but it's really targeted at getting you a job. That's the point of it. As I've said, there are opportunities for internships. Sometimes they're paid, sometimes they're not. It depends on the deal you do with the company. But all of the skills that you'll be learning are the most in-demand skills in industry right now. And every year we go out and talk to companies. We make sure we're up to date. If there's new things that come out, we make sure that they go into the course. So you're going to have a CV to be envious of by the time you finish. And I should also mention that the Scottish Government has a very high priority on turning Scotland into a centre of excellence for data. It wants Scottish companies, Scottish organisations to make the most of the data and the technology that's available at the moment. And so they've set up something called the Data Lab, whose job it is to help Scotland do more with data. And the Data Lab help us. They run events for our students. They help us find internships for students. They run a big conference every year that students go to where they meet potential employers. And the Data Lab have been really helpful to us, and they've been really helpful to the students as well. So what's it like if you come here? Well, the course is pretty popular. So this year we've got about 50 students. I expect that to grow a little. It might be around 80 next year. And as I've said, the students are from all over the world. Some of them are mature students who've worked for 10, 15, even 20 years and are coming back to update their skills. Some of them are fresh out of university. They've just finished their first degree and now they're doing this as a specialisation. So you'll meet some pretty interesting people who've already had jobs before, people who've studied different things. Not everyone has studied computing or maths when they come here. We have people who studied engineering and physics and all kinds of other subjects as well. So if you haven't studied computing, but you've got an interest in computing, maybe you've tried a little bit of programming, you won't be alone in the fact that you haven't done a lot of computer science. You'll have classmates who have, and they'll help you. We're very encouraging of our students to help each other. This year, the students set up their own study groups and they got a room in the library, and the students who understood other bits of subjects gave little talks and workshops to the students who didn't, and so on. And there's really nice atmosphere among the students. And they're all helping each other. So here are a few of our previous students. These happen to be students who've won prizes over the years. So these are one from last year and one from the year before that. Every year the Data Lab, which I already mentioned, runs a number of competitions for students to enter. Usually it's to come up with either a data-driven business idea or to do something new and innovative with the data set that they're provided with. And Stirling's been very successful so far. We've won a prize every year in these competitions. And our students, particularly those who are lucky enough to be in the winning teams, immediately in receipt of a number of very good job offers. So it's a really good thing to do. And it really does speed on the career of the students involved. So I've already mentioned that the career paths for a data scientist are pretty varied. You have a good set of choices. I've listed a few here. I won't bother reading them out to you. I'm sure you can see what you might be able to do on there. But that's a very short list from what is really a very long list. There's barely a large organisation now that's not building a data science team. And because a lot of them are currently in the process of building those teams, there are a lot of jobs being advertised. So you just have to think, well, what would I like to do? What kind of a career really interests me? And let's try and find a company that's in that field and who is recruiting. So I'll finish again. I won't read these out to you. But I'll finish again just with a couple of things that some of our previous students have said. So what I'm going to do is leave this one and another one on the screen for a moment, just for you to have a look at it and to read that through. And at the same time, because I've told you everything that I wanted to say, I'll allow you to start typing questions Now, some of you might be typing questions at the same time, and you might not know which question I'm answering. So what I'm going to do is try and work my way through the questions that you type. And then what I'll do, I'll read out the question so that everybody knows what I'm talking about, and then I'll answer the question, then I'll move on. So if you type a question and I don't immediately answer it, I will get to it. It's just, I'll do them as I see them, so I'm not quite sure which order I'll get them in, but I'll get to everybody's question at some point. So thank you very much again. Thank you for listening. Thank you for hanging around, and please feel free to type in some questions. Thank you. Right, hello again. So I can see there are lots of questions. I'll start to work my way through. So I can see two questions almost asking the same thing. So one says, what are the job prospects for international students? And another asks pretty much the same question in a little bit more detail about if you're not a UK citizen, then will you be able to get a job in the UK? So the international jobs, it does vary from country to country. So some countries, I think some countries are probably even ahead of us. I mean, the number of technology startups in China, for example, is huge now. Other countries, I think they're probably just starting their journey into data, but they're all going to follow the same path. So really, I don't have an in-depth knowledge of the job market in every country around the world, obviously, but I think they're all moving in the same direction. In terms of jobs here for overseas students, it's been our experience so far that 2 or 3 of our students from overseas every year have been offered a job by a company here in Scotland, and the company has sponsored their visa in order to allow them to stay. So if you do well, particularly if you've done your internship with the company, if you do well and the company likes you, there is a skills shortage, and companies are willing to go through that process of sponsoring a visa application in order to get the right candidate for a job. So certainly there's that possibility, and it has happened every year so far. Obviously, there are no guarantees of that. It's 2 or 3 students each time. But that's, a lot of the students want to go back home. They've come to gain skills to take back to their own country. So I'd say certainly if you want to be able to stay and work here, then those opportunities exist. And actually, data science skills are on the list of the Home Office shortage skills, which means that if you have a skill that the Home Office has recognised as being in demand, then your visa application is more straightforward, and data science skills are on that list. So it does make it a little bit easier. Right, okay, so there's a question here. How are we sure of getting real technical knowledge with respect to big data? Are we going to be attached to industry for real world practice? So the short answer is yes. The whole course is based around our interactions with industry. So I already mentioned that a lot of the summer dissertation projects are provided by industrial partners. It might be as an internship. It might just be that a company has an idea and you work on that idea for your project. I also mentioned that we have visiting guest speakers from industry who come along and tell you about what they're doing with data in their job at the moment. So those are very up to date. Those are, right now, this is what my company is doing in and around data. Yeah, that's the thrust of it, really. My background is that I have come into academia from industry. I've run data analytics company for a number of years. So my whole approach is really quite applied and quite industrial, and that's what I've brought to this course. It's very much about applying the technologies. Right, I'd like to know the primary differences between the course that I've just spoken about and the MSc Mathematics and Data Science. So the big difference between those two, they share some modules, but the maths course, you won't be surprised to learn, has a much stronger emphasis on the mathematical foundations and the maths behind particularly the machine learning techniques. So there's a little bit of foundation maths in the big data course, but if you've studied maths between the ages of, say, 16 and 18, there won't be a lot in there that's new to you. Whereas if you've done a degree in mathematics and you really want to get some advanced maths to go into a more mathematically focused career, then the maths for data science course would be the better choice for you. So it's really, the question is, how interested in mathematics are you? Short answer to that one. It's a question, does it include neural networks in the syllabus? Yes. So the data analytics course, that's about machine learning, and the main machine learning techniques that we cover in that include neural networks and others such as decision trees and regression techniques and so on. But again, it's a very applied approach we have. So it's about the methodology. It's about how would you run a machine learning project if that was your job? How do companies run machine learning projects? And so although neural networks are one of the techniques that we teach in that, we don't go into massive detail in all of the theory behind it. There's some, but it's really an applied course. It's about if you find yourself this time next year in a job having to run a machine learning project in a company, how do you go about doing that? And neural networks would be one of the tools that you would use to do that, so you need to understand them, but that's our emphasis. Okay, another question. Being a member of the data lab, does it make it possible for international students to get a job and get a work visa The data lab make that slightly easier because they help us connect students with companies. They won't help you, well, I suppose it's possible if you asked, but they don't tend to get involved in the visa process. But their job really is just to connect skilled students with companies. So there's some sense in which they could be involved in that process. At least one of the students I can think of off the top of my head, he got his visa with a company directly as a result of a project that the data lab found for him. But again, as I say, it depends on the students and the companies and so on. So they have done that, but of course there are no guarantees in that. Okay, I'm working from the top, so I hope this is the right order to do it in. Can we continue professional doctorate in big data after the MSc in just 2 years? Yes, so there is a path through the MSc and into a professional doctorate, whereby the MSc program constitutes the first year of a PhD. So you do 3 years of study, you come out with the professional doctorate, which is essentially a PhD. And the way that's made up is the first year is the taught course that I've just described, and then the following 2 years extend the dissertation. So basically you choose a dissertation, usually this is done in partnership with a company, and the work that you do over that first summer, that forms the basis of what you'll do for the next 2 years to finish off your doctorate. So yes, you can do that. Is it possible to join the course starting the 12th of September? I think it's the 10th this coming year, but yes. for 2018-19, even if I graduate and get my degree on the 20th. Ooh. That might be difficult. It depends where you're coming from as well. Visa issues might be a problem from that if you need a visa. I suspect if you need a visa, the answer is no. I can think of other practical problems that might make it difficult as well. Strictly speaking, we accept students onto the course 2 weeks in. So you might just manage it according to the rules, but whether the practicalities would allow you to do that, I'm not sure. You might. It might be worth talking to student programs here and seeing what you can work out for that. But yeah, it certainly looks tight. Okay, so that's that one. How much time will an international student be getting to search for a job after the 3rd semester? I can't remember what the visa rules are now. You don't get very long in the country once you've finished your course, 2 months. Okay, I'm being told. So 2 months after September. But of course, you can start searching for a job a lot earlier than that. I mean, actually, the process of looking for an internship is pretty much the same as the process of looking for a job. So our students are already talking to companies. So really, you get a good 6 months if you start at the right time to talk to companies and try and sort something out. Okay, next one. If I need a part-time job, the chances of a part-time job at the university, there are some slight, well, not really a job. We use our master's students for things like lab demonstration work on the undergraduate courses. So that involves helping usually 1st and 2nd year undergraduates. So it depends. If you did computer science, then there's some chance of that. Of course, if there's a lot of people who want it, whether or not you get it or not, I don't know. But we try to encourage students not to spend too much time on part-time work, because really what you do in this 1 year is going to shape the rest of your career. And the students who throw themselves 100% into the course, go to all of the extra data science meetups and things in the evening, get involved with the data science community in Scotland, which is really quite strong. They're the ones that maximise their chances of a good job afterwards. So, I mean, I know you need to earn money and so on, but I'd look carefully at the trade-off between part-time work and getting the most out of the course. Right, okay, so the next one says, what percentage of scholarship does the University of Stirling give to international students? So actually, if you go to the handouts tab, hopefully you can see that just above, then there's some information about that, and the scholarships are given on merit. So you apply and you may, if you're lucky, you may be awarded a scholarship, but for the details, go and look in the handouts and all the details are there. Next one, could this master count as the first year for a professional doctorate in big data? Yes, hopefully you heard the answer to that earlier, but yes, the short answer again is yes, you can. Right, where's it gone? As you said, 2 to 3 students get a job offer. What percentage would that make of the international students to take up the course? Right. Yes. So I don't mean 2 to 3 students get a job. I mean 2 to 3 overseas students get their visa sponsored. And the percentage, so, well, it's probably, it depends each year, 20% or so, but not very many of them try. I mean, it could be, let's say 3 got it and 6 tried, then that's half of them. A lot of them had no intention of staying and, have career aspirations back in their own country. So it's slightly, I don't know, it's slightly difficult to put a figure on that really. I think if you really wanted to and you'd done well on the course, then the chances of that are quite high for you. I hope that's an acceptable answer for that one. Right, next one. Yes, there are scholarships for international students. Again, if you look in the handouts, there'll be more details there. Where are we now? Oh, right. So does it use real world scenarios for commercial and scientific applications? Yes, they're based on, particularly the people who are invited from industry to come and talk, they're talking about their real job in data in a real organization. So previously, for example, we had the head of data for HSBC Bank a couple of years ago came and gave a talk about what HSBC were doing around big data at that time. Sometimes they're scientists who come and talk about how data has changed the science they're doing. We had a data journalist last year come and talk about how data was changing the world of journalism. So yes, they are all about real things in the real world. This one here says, even with the third semester, does it take 1 year still or more? Yes, it's exactly a year. So about the 10th of September, it'll start next year and end on the 6th of September, I think, the following year. So it's an exact year. The 2 semesters are of the teaching, and the third semester is the summer. So really June, July, and August. That's when you do your dissertation. Okay, so we have another question. How do we pay the tuition fee, in part payment or otherwise? So you can pay it either in full or in 3 installments, and you'll get an email about that a little bit closer to the time. I've lost that one. Oh, there it is, right. Okay. I already have an unconditional offer as data lab funded places for EU students. Yeah. When will I know if I've been offered a funded place? Okay. I don't know exactly when our admissions team are intending on sending out the letters. The way it works is that if you qualify for a data lab funded place, then you don't have to apply for it separately. We will just allocate those places to people as they accept an unconditional offer. So if you've accepted an unconditional offer, then you'll be on the list. And it depends how many people are ahead of you as to whether or not you get a place. Sometimes people are offered the place and then they drop out and then it's offered to other people. So you don't finally know that you definitely haven't got one until pretty close to the time, unfortunately, the time that you start, because people might drop out at the last moment. In fact, previously we have even had students turn up without funding and then when we discover a student hasn't turned up, the other student gets the funding. So I'm afraid, yeah, you might hear soon or it might be longer, and it just depends on what the other students do, unfortunately. Okay, it says, on the website it is mentioned that we will be assigned some tutors. Can you explain? Okay, so yes, each student gets one personal tutor, and really they're there just to help you with whatever issues you might have when you're in Stirling. So they're the one person that you know that you can knock on their door at any time, ask them questions about your course. Maybe you're not quite sure how some processes work. Maybe you're not quite sure about how the exams are taken or something. So it's one person that is looking out for you, and it's one person that can go to for help. These tutors are there for that kind of thing. It's to kind of look after you a bit. They're not there to help you in detail with your work. You're expected to to work independently on your assignments and so on. Okay, what kind of jobs in science are available to graduates of this course, such as science research? Okay, so yes, that's a very good question. And that's originally the phrase data science was really more about that idea of doing science but based around large sets of data rather than about the traditional scientific method. And it depends what kinds of fields that you want to go into. There's a lot of areas of science now which are just becoming data driven. Things like genetics and environmental science and so on are increasingly about measuring data and analyzing it. And so those skills are increasingly in demand in those scientific areas, even if you don't have a first degree in biology or environmental science or whatever. So those opportunities are there. Actually, I was talking outside of science, but I was talking to colleagues in our humanities department yesterday, and they were saying that increasingly the government funding for research in the humanities is technologically oriented. It's about the consequences of AI, for example. What are the moral and legal and ethical and social consequences of artificial intelligence? And so our students now are even finding that jump across to things like social science and the humanities and so on, because they suddenly need people who understand the technology. And I think that's one of the things I've noticed since running the big data course here is how many people I've met from other departments in the university. And actually, I've had colleagues from media and from environment and from sports, all these different departments coming and sitting in on my lectures because they need data science skills now to do their own scientific job. So I'd like to think that if that was what you were interested in, that this would be a good set of skills for you. Right, okay, so this one says, my international passport will expire January 19. Yes, so that'll be right in the middle of the course if you came in September 18. So you will need to renew that before you start. Our international office here will be able to advise you on that, but probably the safest thing is just to apply for a new passport in your own country. Certainly don't try and turn up with that little left on your passport. That will go wrong. What is the acceptance rate for applicants into the programme? If you qualify, then you will be offered a place. We don't have a quota. We don't filter out students. We have a set of criteria, and if you meet them, then you will be offered a place on the course. So we don't really have a rate or anything like that. And actually, if you don't meet exactly the criteria, it's still, but you're close. For example, you might have a degree in a subject that you don't think perhaps is numerate enough, but you've worked in a job that meant you did some programming or that you did some statistics or something. Those things are taken into account as well. So actually, you probably have a very good chance if you've got this far and you're interested, you have a good chance of getting a place on the course. Is it possible to do a part-time job during studying? So yes, it is. But as I mentioned earlier, we kind of encourage students not to spend too much time on that, because really this is your investment in your future. And, you know, maybe you should spend as much time as you can doing the best you can for 1 year on a course. I appreciate that students sometimes need to work to, you know, just to survive the year, but try and get a good balance. Try and make sure that you invest as much of your time as you can in the course rather than earning a bit more money while you're doing it. Room for admission deferment. You can apply for the 2019 intake. You just have to talk to student programs and make it clear that that's what you're applying for. So that's one. What else? Another one asking about the professional doctorate. So yes, again, you can take the Big Data course as your first year into a professional doctorate, but you have to make sure that you're applying for the professional doctorate We have students now actually who just applied for big data. They got halfway through, they learned about the doctorate, and we've switched them over onto that course. So you don't need to apply for the doctorate right now. You don't need to make that decision, but you need to work towards getting onto that while you're here. Okay, my background is in statistics. Oh no, we don't prefer, it says, do we prefer people with an IT background? So there is programming involved in the course, but it's what I'd call scripting. So if you think about programming, at one end there's software engineering, which is about writing big systems. And at the other end is what you might call scripting, which is, you know, maybe 50 to 100 lines of code to manipulate some data, put it through some analysis, produce some reporting or some charts or something, prepare it for some machine learning. And we teach that in Python right from scratch. So we have students who come on the course who've not done any programming before, and they pick it up. It's a steep learning curve, but you can do it. But if you're going to come with no programming experience, you need to come strong on something else, like the statistics or the maths, so that when your fellow students are learning the maths and the stats, you've already got that and you're paying more attention to the programming. So as long as you've got something like that, either a good background in maths or a good background in programming, then you'll find that first semester is fine. You'll learn the programming skills. Actually, I should add to that, there are plenty of good online courses. There's a website called Code Academy, and they have a nice Python course. You could do that in your spare time in a few hours, and that would at least get you the basics, so that when you started the Python course here, you'd recognize some things and it wouldn't be quite such a steep learning curve for you. So I'd recommend you doing that if you decide to come. Okay, so somebody's asking, is it possible to sit in other classes just to reinforce your skills? So yes, we have a thing that we call it auditing a class. So that means you go to the lectures, but you don't sit the exam or do the assignment or get marked or anything. So if there's a seat available in a classroom, we're happy for somebody else to sit in it and listen. That's fine. But you don't get extra credits for that. You just do it out of interest. So yes, you might like to do that. Okay, so here it says, can we get more than one scholarship at the same time to bear all the expenses? I think generally the answer is no. I suppose it's possible that there might be some source of funding somewhere that you're allowed to use to top up, but certainly from the university here, you could only get one scholarship at a time. Right, hold on. I'll come back to that one in a minute. We've done that one. Okay, so there's just one left, which I'm not sure I can answer. Hold on a second.
Taken contact.
Yes. Right, okay, so there's a question about English skills and asking if a level 2 certificate by city and guilds is sufficient. So the answer is a little bit complicated. It depends on a number of things. You need an IELTS score of 6.0 or better in order to get a visa. So if you're from a country that needs the visa, then you need the IELTS. If you don't need a visa, if it's just the university's requirements, then it's best to talk to our international recruitment team, because they'll know exactly what that level 2 certificate means. I'm afraid off the top of my head I don't. So probably best to talk to the international admissions team, and they'll be able to help you on that exactly. Right, so there are two left. One of them says, "Are you there?" So yes. Okay, I'm not quite sure. And the other, so is there a forum to get to know? Is that a forum to get to know the other people who are in this group, or the other people who've applied? Either way, I don't think there is really. No. Once you're here, the students here have their own Facebook groups and a Slack forum and all kinds of stuff that the students use to talk to each other. But they tend to set those up once they arrive rather than before they do. So yeah, that's that. Okay, so there's a couple more questions. Somebody's asking, is it okay to come 1 week late? And yes, you will catch up a week late. We, particularly overseas students, there are visa issues and so on, and people turn up in the second and sometimes even the third week. And yeah, we make sure that they catch up. All of our lectures are recorded, so if you do miss a class, you can go and listen to it and look at the slides later. So there are plenty of ways of catching up if you miss things. Here's a question. Has any West African student already got admitted to the MSc program in Big Data? Good question. Where have we had students from? I'm going to name some countries, and they may or may not be West African, sorry. Certainly, we've had a couple of students from Ghana. Who else have we got this year? I'm not so sure where all of them are from, to be honest. Oh, there's one from Nigeria. Excuse my ignorance if these aren't West African countries, sorry. A small number, it certainly. Yeah, not so many. I must admit, I don't exactly know where exactly all of them are from. Right, that's okay. Any other questions? How many hours of classes do we need to attend on average per day? So an average day will have 4 or 5 hours of actual contact time, and then you're expected to do about that much again, maybe a little bit more in your own time. So when you add it all up, it is kind of most of your time taken up on the course, either in contact with classes and labs and so on, or working on the assignment or working in your own time. Someone's asking about preparation. Yes, there's a number of really nice online resources. So just off the top of my head, I've already mentioned Code Academy. If you go there, they've got a nice course on Python and a nice course on SQL databases. You could look at those. Coursera. I seem to be, hold on a second, I think something's not working. Sorry, I think there's something up with the microphone. Yes, have a look at some of the machine learning courses on Coursera as well. They would be a very nice introduction to the course. And there's a question, do we have an online course? No, we don't at the moment, I'm afraid. But as I just said, there are a great many quite nice online courses at the moment. Look at something like Coursera. It's not a full degree, but it's a nice preparation for doing something like a full degree. Okay, good. Well, it looks like we've come to the end of our hour. So thanks very much for listening. Thank you for your very insightful questions. And I hope to see some of you here in September. Bye-bye.